friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop. I have made some progress with the laser cutter. I'm going to walk you through what I've done, and you'll get to see a bunch of varying clips here of things I've made with the laser cutter and just experiments and then some improvements that I've made to the electronics and different things like that. So it's just kind of a potpourri of laser cutter videos. Hope you enjoy it. I think this thing is an invaluable tool. I'm so excited to have it. So I'm just showing you where my laser cutter landed. This is my desktop PC, and so it needs to be close to the PC, or not real close, but close enough where you can connect it with a USB cable. That table is attached to my desk, so it was the perfect place to set the machine. You notice the blue plastic piping that goes out to the aluminum piping, and that is to get rid of the exhaust, because this is actually cutting wood with a fire, with a laser, and so there's a lot of smoke and there's a lot of smell. It has a fan built in. As you remember, I rewired that fan, and so the fan is blowing the exhaust outside, so you actually have to run it through the wall outside or up through the ceiling outside somewhere. So I chose to just go straight out through my wall there. What you can't see also is down below, you can see that bucket, and that bucket has water in it, and there's a water pump that pumps water through the laser tubing to keep the laser cool. So that runs the whole time the machine is running as well. In case anybody was thinking of getting one of these and putting it in your living room or your kitchen, it's not a good idea. These have to be vented, and you have to have water pumped through the machine at all times. So that's a big consideration that you should think about if you decide to get one of these. Well, there's my very first project with my laser cutter. And I didn't do much with that. My brother actually made the file. I just resized it to a smaller size and then told it to cut it out. And there you go, you can see what it did. Now, it looks like it's all burnt, and for the most part it is burnt. But a little bit of sanding, I believe, will get rid of the smoky look and the dark look there. So that's what it looks like hot off the press. Now we'll do a little bit of sanding and just see if that changes the look. Well, that's not too bad for a first effort. You know, I don't even know how hot to set everything, how to fine-tune the laser beam, if there is such a thing. I really don't know anything about it. This was just a quick and dirty, let's see what it does, you know. So this is a very first effort, but that looks promising. You know, it's cut in there fairly deep. I set it at 15%. Perhaps, now that's power, I guess you'd say. Perhaps I should have only used 10% power, and it probably would have made it look a little better, because it cut it pretty deep. I've got a lot of tutorials to go through, and you know, a lot of things to learn about it. I'm just going to see if I can clean it up a little bit more here, using my fingers rather than the flat board, because I can get my fingers right into the spots where I want the most sanding. It didn't help it very much, but you can see there that, you know, it pretty much did what I wanted it to do. I'm sure I can make that look better over time. Well, friends, I've finally progressed to do something on my own with the laser cutter. Wow, that's all I did. Well, it's a little deceiving. You know, I was experimenting because I don't know how hot to set everything. Everything's just, you know, by the seat of your pants with these things. There's nothing that just tells you this is what you have to do. You know, I wish there was. There might be after I get you know, I may put a video out explaining it in common sense terms. Here's what you need to know. Because nobody seems to do it in common sense terms. It's so technical. It's just, oh, it's complicated as heck. Way overcomplicated. All right, so what is this and why does this count? Well, I just wanted to see, number one, you know, how thick it would cut through. This is, well, let's just see how thick it is. This is 200 thousandths of an inch thick. So this is not a quarter inch. 250 would be a quarter. So it's just below a quarter inch. It did cut all the way through. And all I had to do was just poke it out. It actually cuts that tight so that it still fits back in the hole and stays in the hole. And it cut that out. You know, it's amazing how tight it cuts the hole, and the hole stays that tight. What I was testing here was just, you know, the sizes. Does it cut to size and all that? And you can see here this hole, I wanted it to be 750 thousandths of an inch. In the real world, what it actually is about 725 thousandths, which, you know, isn't too bad. That's pretty close. It's 25 thousandths off. Actually, in the other direction, it's a little bit bigger. It's 740 thousandths almost that way. So it's about 10 thousandths off one way and about 20 thousandths off another way. 25 thousandths, whatever. But the point is, it's pretty darn accurate. Now, that's just out of the box and me not understanding it very well yet. I think you can see that the fact that it cuts that tight of a hole and that you can physically put the plug right back in the hole and it's in there, you know, I defy you to do that by hand and cut that tight. I mean, look, there's the backside where it's not black, and you can see how tight the hole is. That's pretty darn tight. Same way with this. Pretty amazing to me. I've got a lot to learn, but at least I'm starting to grasp the concept. You can see the next project that I'm working on there. And you can tell it's a picture and it's someone riding a horse. I'll show you what it looks like in real form. That's a picture of my father riding a horse called Shotgun Red, and he was in the World Championships, and if I'm not mistaken, he either won it or got second. I can't remember. Well, friends, I'm going to claim victory on that. This is just a mock-up, first of all. Let me just say that. And this would be the peghead veneer. This is actually sycamore in this case, but I just picked some wood. Doesn't really matter at this point. This is Osage orange in yellow, and this brown is walnut. And you can see that it fits down in the cavity already. I'll try to take this yellow out if I can. Of course, on camera, it's got to be stubborn. But there you can see it does come out. So it does fit right down in the hole, and it fits very snug. I'm actually impressed how snug it fits. I kind of didn't think it would fit that tight, but it does. So I'm pretty happy with that. For my very first attempt. Can't hardly beat that. And then the darkness around there that you can see the smoke, that will all sand right off. Now I need to cut out the word Rosa there. Now this isn't a complete finished deal yet. I want individual petals. I could have it score the individual petals. I could actually have it score the veins in the leaves too. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going with all this yet, but that's a pretty good first effort. I'm pretty happy with that. So there's what it looked like in its final form. Now it hasn't been sanded smooth yet. You can see that the inlay is sitting up proud of the surface. This is walnut, this is hedge, Osage orange. This is just an outline to kind of show me where the center is and line it up. It's just a helpful alignment tool. That may come off later, I don't know. But right now, that's what I have. This is the first attempt at printing my name. Now, it's in 2 pieces now. It actually was 1 piece, but when I cleaned off my desk this morning, I didn't notice it and I broke it. But anyway, it came out. That's how it comes out of the cutter. You can see it's very, very fine detail. There's no way you could cut that by hand in wood and get that to stay together. You'd break it for sure. So that's pretty darn cool that it cuts that detailed. This tells me my power. I had my power at 12%. I was cutting at 75 millimeters per second. And that's talking about the background for the rastering and for cutting out the dish. And it obviously didn't cut the dish deep enough. So I'm trying another one right now as we speak, and I'm trying it at 65 millimeters per second, slowing it down so it'll cut a little bit deeper rather than turning the power up. And I'm hoping that will work. And so it's all trial and error. It's just your best guess. That's all it is. And there, my friends, is what it looks like after you clean it up and sand it smooth. It's perfectly smooth now. You can't feel it at all. And the best thing about that whole thing is there's not one single speck of fill anywhere. Now that is awesome. And of course, keep in mind, this is really my very first attempt at this. And hopefully it will only get better from here. Now, you know, I eventually want to cut out individual petals and inlay them and cut them out, have the wood turned in different directions so that the petals are running in different directions, and so it looks more like a real flower, like I did by hand. And that's the way I plan to cut it. So I may cut out 3 or 4 of the different reds out of Paduke, and turn the flower 3 different ways or 4 different ways, and then pick and choose the petals and inlay them in there. So now in that case, maybe it'll take a little fill. I don't think so, though. I think it's going to work just fine. My biggest fear with doing it that way is just how do you keep it all together? Because when it cuts all the way through, the petals fall down inside the machine. That's the problem. So I've got to think about all this and put a little tray under there to catch them or something. And I just have to figure it all out, get all the logistics figured out. But it has all kinds of potential. And of course, I've made all these medallions. I'm going to figure out some way to give away these medallions on my channel. A good number of them will go to my Patreon supporters. I told you I was going to get a little micro switch to put on the cover of the laser cutter so that when you pick up the cover, it would automatically kill it. Well, here's the little micro switch. You can see here, it's one of the little toggle deals. And I was just testing. I thought they're marked here as normally open or normally closed. This one here is normally open, meaning that, it won't pass current through there unless you press this toggle down. See, and when I press it down, it works. So when the lid closes, then the current will go through. You can probably hear the little beep. So that's the way we're going to wire it up. We've got the 2 wires on the switch, and we're just going to solder those up real quick. Now we'll double check the continuity. This time we'll go through the actual wires. Okay, so there's one of them hooked up, and then we can test there's our meter. It works. Now let's see if it doesn't go through the switch this way. But as soon as if I press this, if I press the switch and then hit this, it should beep. And it does. So that tells me we've got it wired correctly. I've got ends for these as well, but I can't solder them on until I get it over there because I have to pass this through some really small holes. I don't have a connector that will actually stick into the switch down here, so I just made one. I cut the 1/2 of the clip off here, and I've already tested it. It goes in there, and I'll put it in here, and then I'll just crimp this connector shut. That should hold that, and then I just run that wire down here to the little
panel on the motor and should be able to tighten this down. I don't know if my hand will probably be in the way where you can't really see this. So sorry, but that worked. And all I did was stick it into this little socket here and tighten it down. So hopefully you can see that right there. There's the wire. That goes back to my switch over here. Here's the other wire coming from the switch. And all I do is I'll connect it to the wire that I took out of the original connection. And all I have to do on this one, I think, is I'll put this, I don't have anything that matches this. This is a weird connection. But I checked it and I can force it into this and it stays. So I'm just going to use that. That's the way I'm going to connect it up. If it comes loose, well, then it just doesn't work. It's not that big a deal. But this way I don't have to change anything about the laser cutter. I can always put it back like it was. You know, this is not, I haven't done anything that's modifying the cutter at this point. Now I can just plug this wire. This is the wire that was actually in this little connector block back here. And I'll just plug it into the end of this and force it in there, and it does seem to go in there and stay. And it just fits it real nice and snug and tight. So it's almost as good as the proper connector. What I want to do is mount it like this so that when the lid closes, it'll press that shut. And I think maybe you can even hear that. But now, the problem is, you know, there's two little holes here, and I could find some little tiny screws and stick it through here, but the problem is the holes are below this. This is part of the frame that holds this whole thing, and I don't want to take that all apart and misalign everything. That would just be a big pain in the neck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little tiny block of wood, super glue it to this, then I'm going to take the block of wood and super glue it to the side of this in the proper location. And I'm just going to glue it there. And, you know, I don't think there's enough force on this to create a problem, and that CA glue is pretty darn strong. If it ever breaks, it's not a catastrophe. Like I said, I can unplug this, plug it back in the way it was originally from the factory if it creates a problem. But this at least gives me another level of safety. The reason I don't want to just glue this straight on there with that little block is I want to move it over away from this wall just a little bit. That way I think the lid has a better chance of making contact with it, because there is a slight gap between the lid and this wall. So I have the switch wired here, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, this is my second switch. The CA glue, when I tried to glue the wood on here, gave me a problem, and so I had to do it again. But anyway, so here we are. We've got it right here. Now I have to use CA glue one more time. So I think that's going to work. Now we should be able to test this. Okay, we've got the laser right down in here, and you should be able to see the laser fire. With this lid down, it should fire. So if I press the switch, test switch, and it did, it fired. It's working presently. Now let's see, if I lift this, will the laser fire? No, it does not fire. So that's, now let's see if it fires. Yep, it sure does. So just lifting it a little bit, just like that, and the laser doesn't fire. So that works great. So that's a good safety switch. In case somebody comes over here and lifts this up, that laser gets cut off instantly.
So thank you very much for watching. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. If you're not subscribed, I'll just let you know that there's no charge to subscribe whatsoever. You just click the subscribe button, and then there'll be a bell icon show up after that, and you click on that bell icon, and then that way you'll get notified whenever I put out a new video. Thank you very kindly for watching. Tell your friends.